Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired with me, Bill, the company's expert. And thank you to Robert Frias, if I'm saying that correctly, for being the latest member of my channel. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the show of support. And this is a Q&A. So we are going to talk about how to get a job, how to pass a job interview, how to do a resume, how to discover jobs, the different methods for getting a job. Always remember that applying to posted internet jobs is not a good way to get a job. It's a terrible way to get a job, but it is unfortunately the default method for a lot of people. At least it's taught that way to a lot of beginners, a lot of first-time job seekers as the thing you do. And hopefully you realize that, certainly as your career goes on, you realize that that is not the best way to get a job. In fact, there are many other things beyond that, things like networking that you get into that are far more promising, that not only yield better jobs, but there's a lot more of them. So get in the chat. You should see a chat box right next to my face, and you can ask me anything, probably to do with careers and how to get a job or how to improve yourself. Stuff like that. That's what I'm here to answer. And yeah, we are going to be getting into it today. Until we have the questions start rolling in, I'd like to remind everyone that I have a course here called the Get Hired course. And there's a link in the description. I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. It's something that there's a link in the description, and basically it's all my recommendations of how to get a job. And it uses two main methods: the default method for a lot of people, applying to posted jobs, and also tapping the hidden job market and doing networking properly to tap the vast resource of hidden jobs that there actually are. These are jobs that are filled before they get posted publicly, because usually they are the most desirable jobs. So it's a step-by-step program or recommendation with templates and things like this, and it goes over how to write a resume, how to do your own personal branding, how to do your LinkedIn profile, where to look for jobs, how to apply for them, how to conduct interviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole thing is right there. If you are interested, link in the description. And while we are also waiting for the questions to roll in, just for the hell of it, here's my other course, the $100 MBA. Also, link in the description box below. And if you are interested in learning business, presumably for the purpose of starting your own business or doing a side hustle, or you want to be a manager, you want to have some of those skills and understand how to run a business, that's also in there too. And you get the same material that you would in a university MBA program. So check that out if you are interested. Okay, so yeah. This week is in the United States. It's a big holiday in the United States, 4th of July. Up here in Canada, we just had our big celebration, the 1st of July, which is Canada Day. So it's probably a slower week for this kind of stuff in both those countries anyway than normal. So if you are here, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering, what you're struggling with. Anything related to how to get hired. And I will be doing a video for tomorrow to do with the salary question, how to answer the salary question. Salary question is very complicated. There's so many variations of it. If you get asked the salary question during a job interview, it's different from if you're being asked the salary question on a job application. They say, what are your salary expectations, or what are your salary requirements? Completely different answer depending on, if you're in person or you're filling out a form. Usually when you fill out a form, you have to give a number. You can't give an explanation or do anything else. They usually have it hard-coded into their online form so that you have to put a number in that field, and if you don't, it won't allow you to proceed and submit the application. So There's no way of getting around it. You can't put a range. You can't put anything other than a number. So that's the difference in that question. If you're at a job interview, of course, you can give an explanation. And we all know, or hopefully we know, that the last thing you want to do is ever give a number. Because what's going on is they have absolutely no idea how much you're worth and how much they should pay you. Your value is a very arbitrary and abstract concept, and they honestly have no idea. And so, they're asking you to sort of give them your value. And this is what this question is about. They're asking you, how much money are you worth? How much do you need? Right? And they will assess your worth based on your answer to that question. That'll be how much money you are worth in their mind after that. It's funny because a lot of people think that the answer to that question is to give market price, is to say, oh, I've looked it up on Glassdoor or payscale.com, and it says that for someone who has my role in this region, I'm worth this much. This is the range, and this is the average. People think that that's like, oh, that's how much I'm worth. No, it isn't. That's the average. Now, some companies pay above market price. Sometimes they pay below market price. Some companies will intentionally pay above market price so that they, all things being equal, they get the best people. And they tend to get people that want to stay more. They don't leave as easily, and they tend to put up with more. So maybe if the job is less pleasant, or the organizational culture, the work environment is more toxic, people will still stay, right? Because they're being paid more. Other companies, other organizations, they intentionally pay below market price. They say, I know the average price is X, people in this position here generally make approximately X, but we pay below that. And, we won't necessarily get the best people, all things being equal, or if we do, they won't stay. There'll be a higher turnover of employees, but we're okay with that. We're fine with that. And some companies will say that's intentional, because what we do is we do it as a vetting process where if we find that you are a very good employee, then we'll promote you and then we'll pay you a lot more. If you don't pass that test, you stay at that low pay level until presumably you leave eventually. Right? So there's all kinds of things going on there. So that's why it's a very complicated question to have to answer, especially when you're flying blind and you don't know, specifically about the organization you're applying to, what their attitude or policies are. Okay, so the winner of the first question in the chat goes to Vixen. Vixen says, not a question, it's a comment. So I take back my award then. I got hired recently, and I will attribute to some of this because I practiced, took your tips, and listened to your videos every day. Wow, that's impressive. Thank you, Vixen. I'm glad it worked out. Your salary negotiation really helped me. Well, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And congratulations, by the way. It's great when stuff pays off, and I'm sure you're much relieved to have something in the bag after the period of uncertainty when you're between jobs. So congratulations. That's great. Yeah, a lot of people, when we're between jobs, if we've never been if we've never gone the entrepreneurial route and we don't know really how to make money directly, when we're between jobs, we're at one of our lowest points in our lives. Our confidence takes a hit and we feel unsure of ourselves. We feel confused. We feel overwhelmed. It's really a low point. And then the irony is that right when you're at that point, that's when you have to sort of perform and put on a show and go to job interviews and, create this image of, oh yeah, I'm successful, I'm confident, I'm valuable. Usually a lot of people, we feel anything but at that point. It's just an irony how that tends to work out. So yeah. yeah, there's a lot lower participation on these live streams now. I don't know if YouTube did something and they kind of downgraded me. They're not like promoting my videos as much or something, but we used to get over double the amount of people here. So I'm not sure what's going on lately. Maybe it's the summer. I don't know. Or like, I would say it would be the first week of July, the 4th of July in the States and the 1st of July in Canada. And like, some of these kind of holidays and things like this. Maybe it's that, but it's been going on for a few weeks. So I'm not sure. Anyway, if you are here, get in the chat. Let me know what you're struggling with or what challenge you're currently trying to overcome, and I'll see if I can give you a hand. Dipin, Chunum says 4th of July 4th. Yeah, well, for just this week, yes, I agree. In my case, it's been the last 3 weeks, so I'm not sure what's happened in the last 3 weeks. Apparently, the job market, at least for North America, is looking pretty good at the moment in terms of people being hired, people having jobs. Now, that can be a deceptive metric. Just because people are employed doesn't mean that they're fully employed. Like they could be underemployed. If you're a fully qualified professional and you're driving a taxi or working in a restaurant or something, I mean, that's not great. It may look on paper like you're employed and everything's fine, but as we know, that's not the reality, right? So people could still be underemployed, or they could be stretched pretty thin working 2 jobs to make ends meet. So a lot of those employment metrics, I think, are a bit skewed. You got to read into them. Dipin says maybe everybody who watches your stuff has gotten jobs. Yeah, I'd like to think that. Maybe, But yeah, I mean, this is a Q&A. If I don't get any questions, there's kind of not really too much of a point to it. So hopefully people will be able to ask me something that is relevant to you, that would help you. We got 19 people here, so hopefully you're here to learn something. If you let me know what you're particularly interested in, then I can speak to that. I don't want to just talk off the top of my head randomly. Usually that ends up being pretty boring. So, I had kicked around the idea of doing a sort of live stream, possibly where you talk about items in the news. I give you my take on it. I mean, not that I'm fully informed about everything, but I can. When it comes to business stuff, I usually have some thoughts about that, and I'm not sure if anyone is particularly interested in that. I actually reached out to a couple of other YouTubers in this space to do more of a collaborative thing. Maybe we could all go on there together and give our ideas about it. I didn't get a huge response. There's one individual that I'm hoping to be able to maybe get something happening with, but we'll see. Doesn't seem to be a very collaborative type space. Vixen says, what do you think of adding new coworkers right off the bat on LinkedIn? Oh, you mean you want to connect to your coworkers at your job? Personally, I think it's fine. Now, that's going to vary depending on the attitude of your employer, like the culture there, and the workers themselves, right? If they're already on LinkedIn and they've got their profile developed and everything, presumably they don't see it as any kind of issue, right? I would connect to, if it were me, I would connect to your coworkers. I connect to your boss. I connect to anyone you can within your organization and do it that way. I don't see a downside. Now, unless that particular organization in their culture, they're paranoid of LinkedIn. They see it as like, oh, you're on LinkedIn? Okay, that means you're looking for another job. Like, you never know. I mean, that attitude has been known, but I don't think that's the majority view. I don't think so. not in my experience, but check it out, right? Maybe if you talk to a couple of your coworkers and just say, if I connected with you on LinkedIn, would that be okay? And just see what their attitude is and maybe gauge their attitude like that. If your boss is already on there, I mean, why not? If you join groups on LinkedIn that are relevant to your industry, so you're kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of your industry, what's going on in your industry, what are the latest tools, what are the latest trends, that's a perfectly valid thing. And if you work anywhere in sales or you're someone that could interface with people outside of your organization, it's a no-brainer. You should be on there, because this is a tool to do that with. What I used to do like years ago, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like a long time ago, was I would interact with people outside my company all the time. My job would be contacting all these different people and all these different other organizations for various things. So, I mean, I would connect with them on LinkedIn, and you can see sometimes if they're just a voice on a phone, you could see like, oh, this is the person, this is what they look like, and this is their background. And, it's a good thing. If nothing else, it helps you understand the person a little bit better, where they come from, what their core competency is, So yeah, I don't see it as a major issue, but just check at your organization if there's any weirdness around it. Dipin says, can you give tips about what can you tell me about yourself when you have a gap in your resume? How do you explain yourself without sounding as though you will be an unreliable employee? Well, the thing about having a gap in your resume, okay, number one, if it's a gap in the past, usually nobody cares about it. So let's say you worked at a job and then you took 2 years off. There's a 2-year gap, but then you got another job and that's on your resume, and now you're looking for something else, okay? So that's a past gap. Nobody usually cares about that, okay? But if it's a current gap, so for example, you worked at a job and then 2 years ago you left and you haven't had another job since. So you've got a 2-year gap between your last job and now, okay? That's what I mean as a current gap in your resume. That's when people will potentially, especially recruiters, they'll potentially see that as a red flag. So the key is not having a space, okay? So if you could put something in that space, that would really help. So for example, you volunteered or you went back to school. Those would be great things to have there, because it's not really a gap. It's a sort of, for those 2 years, there's no gap. I was doing this. I went back to school. That's a perfectly justified explanation for not working during those 2 years, right? There's all kinds of other things you could put. So the simplest thing, okay, if you've got this like work gap and it's, say, longer than a year, okay, anything less than a year, certainly less than 6 months, you don't have to justify. It's, you're looking for another job, okay? That doesn't require usually too much explanation. But if it's certainly longer than a year, then you'll probably need to give an explanation. Now, if you can quickly, if you've got no explanation for it, you were out of work and you couldn't find anything, they will see that as a red flag. The reasoning is that if you couldn't find a job, maybe there's something wrong with you. Maybe you're a high-risk employee. Maybe we should steer clear of you. That's how recruiters think. That's how they're trained to think about these things. So if you can quickly go and take some kind of online course, some free course, whatever, just so you can say like, no, I haven't, it isn't a gap. I went back to school. I decided to brush up on my skills to make sure they're au courant, they are up to date, and I took, some online training. That's what I've been doing. And now that I've concluded that, I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, and that's why I'm here. So if you could say something like that, that really helps. Now, just so go out and quickly take like some free online course, and then you're not lying. You have taken online training, right? So, and if you take it in like a relevant area, either in your industry or sort of general training, like to help your soft skills, presentation skills, presenting skills, public speaking skills, all that kind of stuff. Like if you take all of those, that would be fine too. Okay. So that's what I would say for that. Jack N says, I was asked this question in an interview. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received and the best advice you've ever given? How would you recommend answering? Well, I mean, that's going to be individual to you. I'm not really big on these general type questions, to be honest. I think they're idiotic. I mean, I don't know what recruiters are wanting to hear or what the twisted psychology, pseudo-psychology is around these things. I mean, like, look, what's something that's helped you? I don't know. You've learned presentation skills. You believe in yourself. You got trained in your particular industry. I would say, the best piece of advice I got was, learn soft skills, learn presentation skills, brush up on your charisma, and go and get some management training. Learn about areas that traditionally you've never really done, things like sales and marketing. And I did that, and it exposed me to lots of other ways of thinking, and I'm much more well-rounded now, and I've been able to, just with a little extra work and a little extra training, I was able to, it makes all the difference when, you have a little bit of charisma and you know how to sell something or you know how to present. It opens a lot of doors. So that's probably the best advice I've received. And then, I don't know, advice you've given. I mean, just another variant on that, something like that. Somebody asked me that question in one of these streams, like about a month ago or something. They said, what's your greatest bit of life advice? It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've just learned. I enjoy learning. I try and learn as much as I can, either through books or through practice, just by doing. I'm constantly trying new things. I'm constantly trying to learn about things that I don't really have much of a knowledge base in. And, so, I mean, there isn't one single thing that really helps. And the other thing is that if you do have something you legitimately feel is the best thing that's been the most awesome thing for you, the way this stuff usually works is that if you're talking to a 21-year-old recruiter, you could be giving them absolute gold here, but they don't recognize it when they see it. So they go, oh, that wasn't what I was wanting to hear. I was wanting you to talk about, your academics, or, talk about, your motivations, or, like some silly psychological thing. So it's a question of you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. I'd rather be damned if I don't. So there you go. How's that for an answer? Sorry, I know that's not really what you were wanting to get, but that's kind of how I think about what I think about those questions. Dipin says, what do employers look for in your LinkedIn profile? If everything is on your resume, what's the point? Okay, great question. For anyone who's ever done sales, you know what I'm talking about when I say this. What people look for varies depending on your audience, right? Like, for example, you put up a LinkedIn profile. Now, who's going to see this? It could be potential employers. It could be old work colleagues. It could be salespeople. It could be, people that are wanting to partner you or wanting to do a survey on you, something like that. Like, each of these different people are going to look for completely different things, right? So when you say, what do employers look for? Okay, there's many different types of employers. In many industries, there are many sizes. There's many people within those employers, and they're all going to be looking at different things. Okay, so there is not one single answer for that, right? Basically, the only real answer you can give is a general answer, and that is, do they want to be involved with this person? Okay, so that's probably an area of commonality across anybody who would look at your profile. Do they want to be involved with you? Would they want to initiate contact with you? Are you the type of person they would want to interact with, either to offer you a job or to sell you something or anything? So you would want to do very common things, very general things like look approachable. Don't do clear, off-putting things like write sort of inappropriate things under your tagline and stuff, which I've seen. A lot of people do this. They have pictures that are kind of like off-putting, not very approachable, this kind of thing. Now your second question is, if everything is on your resume, what's the point? Okay, great question. There is a very clear point to it. And that is that LinkedIn is publicly facing. And it's also possible. It's almost like Wikipedia. You can edit it. You can add stuff. So for example, on LinkedIn, your profile, you can have recommendations. You can be endorsed by different people. And you can be connected to different people. So they're not just looking at your resume. They're looking at what your, how validated you are by others. Okay. That's like a big part of it. Okay, they can see, in some cases, all your connections. If they don't see your connections, they can see some of the communication and some of the participation you've done. So all of that is a big deal, okay? Alphonse says, "Hi, Bill. I hope you're doing great." I am doing great, actually. Thank you. I had an interview for a job, and I'm really interested in that involved a recruiter and the chief operating officer. However, it was low key, in my opinion. They seemed to be asking questions from a script and had no time to give free-flowing answers. At least I thought the COO would have done better. What do you think? Yes, I agree. It's kind of, look, chief operating officers tend to be introverts. Even though they're jumped up, they tend to be introverts. They tend to be technical, detail-oriented people, and they tend to have poor social skills. Of all the types of executives, at least in a company, in a for-profit company, the chief operating officer is probably the most aloof, the most gruff, and the one with the worst social skills. So, that tends to be how it goes. Usually they're engineer types or technician types, that sort of thing. So that's what you get. What you see is what you get. And it's disappointing because you would think that at that level, people would have more of a free-flowing, unstructured conversation. That is how people get hired for those types of roles. You can bet that to get a chief operating officer job, you don't sit down and you're not interrogated by a 21-year-old recruiter that doesn't know anything. You're talking to other executives. You're talking to them over lunch, over dinner. And you're giving free-flowing conversations that build that. It's a process of them getting to know you. So, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm assuming that it's maybe a lower-level job that you're going for here. Why they would do this, but yeah, that's pretty disappointing. What do I think? Yeah, that's what I think. Usually, you never know. If it's a very formal organization, they might not want to step all over the recruiter's procedure. So the chief operating officer would sit there in the interview and just let the recruiter do their thing and let the recruiter lead the encounter. So, this very artificial, forced, unpleasant interrogation that they like to do. Maybe the chief operating officer is just going with it, to not step on their toes, right? They could easily just bulldoze everybody and take over the meeting and do it the way they want, but maybe it's a sign of, maybe I'm being too kind here, but it could be a sign of respect to just, let them handle it the way they want and you are there to contribute. That's what I would suspect is maybe going on there. Without knowing anything about, I don't even know what industry this is. I don't know who the people are. That's maybe a guess. Dipin says, let's say I applied for a software job online. Is it a good idea to contact the development team on LinkedIn? What do I say? Is it better to look for the recruiter and message them? No. You see, here's what's going on, okay? Look, it takes all kinds. When you're dealing with people, anything you can imagine will work some of the time, okay? No matter how crazy, right? There'll always be somebody that says, oh, well, I tried that and it worked. Yeah. But the odds are that that really won't. You know what I'm saying? So there are some exceptions. But generally what's going on here is that if they've posted the job and they want it to go through a recruiter, through standard channels, okay? That's the way they want to do it, okay? So, fair enough. That's the way what they're wanting you to do. Now, if you're going to contact anyone, I would not contact the recruiter and I wouldn't contact the development team. I would contact the hiring manager, okay? Now, maybe you don't know who the hiring manager is. That's the thing, because they're usually not the point of contact. Usually you contact a hiring manager when you're not going for a specific job that's already posted publicly. That's the problem, right? Because in that case, a lot of hiring managers will just forward you to the recruiter. You go and apply online, you go and talk to the recruiter. That's how we're doing this, right? Okay, but it takes all kinds. I mean, for what it's worth, I got a teaching job doing precisely that, where they posted a job online and it went through a recruiter, but I ignored all of that and I went and I talked to a hiring manager just independently and said, like, I can't remember, so long ago, but I've been either asked to teach or whatever it was, and I was wondering if there was any opportunities, or something like this, or something to that. I wasn't asking about opportunities. I would just say, is there an outlet? Would it make sense to is there a way I can contribute? And they said, oh, well, we are actually looking for teachers. Come on in. And then they gave me an interview. Something like that. I can't remember the details, but that's an exception. So it can work, but usually by doing this, they want you to go through standard channels. They want you to go to a recruiter. Okay. Generally I just wouldn't engage on this kind of stuff. I would go to hiring managers in general that haven't posted jobs. You don't care if they've posted something. You just want to talk to them. And you send them a message, basically saying, I can solve this problem. If ever you need someone to solve that problem, let me know, because I'd love to work for you. Right? It's independent of whether they posted something or not. If you want to contact the development team, go for it. There's no harm in it, and you won't know till you've tried, right? But generally speaking, I would talk to hiring managers. I would not talk to recruiters, and I would not talk to employees, like lower level employees, workers. Hopefully that makes sense. That is a good question there, Dipin. Julia, hi, Bill. It's great to see you. Well, thank you. It's great to have you back. If the employer offers to complete a test task, should it always be paid? Well, it depends. Okay. If it's a test, okay, it's like an actual test, then it doesn't have to be paid. Like, for example, they can bring you in to do an interview and give you some kind of test to do, an evaluation, where you answer questions or, whatever. They check out your skills, right? And that's fine. Okay. But usually the way it works, depending on what country we're in, what the laws are, is that if they then get you to do something, that they take the results of that and they use it, right? Like, it's actual work. You do a task for them that they use as part of their production, right? That's essentially getting you to work for free, right? You're not employed. They haven't given you an employment contract. They've said, oh, on condition of your employment, you have to do this work for me, right? And it's all part of your evaluation. So you do it, and then they've gained the work. You've actually helped them with their production. A very common sort of scam is where they say, I need you to write this report or need you to do this study or, whatever. So you go away and you do it, and then you forward me the PDF of your report. Do an evaluation on this, right? go and do a inspection of our facility and go evaluate it, make some recommendations, that kind of thing. It's part of your evaluation. And then what happens is they don't hire you, and then they keep that work, which they then use. So they essentially used you for like some kind of consulting work without paying you. That is illegal in most countries, depending on what the labor laws are. Like in the United States, that's illegal. Canada, that's illegal. I think most of the EU, that's illegal. Okay, so if it's something that they can actually use and you're doing actual work that helps them, but they're not paying you, that's bad. If they're giving you a test of some kind and it's just a throwaway thing, they're not using the results to help them in their production, that's okay. Murica Stuff says, I've been binge watching your videos and just want to say thank you. Maybe too much as I've been hearing your voice in my sleep. Okay, that might not be good. Hopefully I'm saying encouraging things to you. It's not like a case of like, I'm in your head, I got some buttons here, it's like, they're not working. There we go. I got this one. I did another one that's, actually, I'm using the wrong screen here, aren't I? I should be using this screen. I've got that, but then I can do this, right? Anyway. Okay. Yes, I'm trying to pretend that I'm hip, and it's not working. So I will abort. Okay. Dimitri Zorin says, should I accept to do the test task? It goes after a 2-day interview. It takes about a week, and it is free for the senior designer role. Okay, so Julia was asking about, should the test task always be paid? Now, Dimitri is saying, should I accept to do the test task? It takes about a week. So you have to do a week of work for a senior designer role? Well, okay. The first thing I would do is figure out what's the reputation of this organization. Like if you're working for, if you're doing this as part of the interview process for a company, like a private company, is this like some tin pot little company, or is this some well-established, trustworthy, multinational corporation or something that we've all heard of? They've been around. Like, are they legitimate, or is it potentially not legitimate? That's kind of the first question I would have. Okay. But I mean, a week of work to see if you qualify, that's excessive. Usually we don't see that. So that raises a bit of a red flag to begin with. You could, like, if they're asking you to do a week of work, at that point, I would ask them a couple of questions. Like, is this purely a test? Are you going to use these? That kind of thing. And then I would check out what, other people have said about this company on job sites like Glassdoor or PayScale, where I know on some of those sites, people can, like, job seekers can write reviews of the organization. They can say, like, well, the interviewer was rude and they were disrespectful and they didn't have a clue. And I went to a job interview and the recruiter yelled at me in a very hostile kind of way. I never want to work there. They write those kind of reviews. So I would check out the company there too, and just ask them what they need it for. Are you going to be using this? Now, if it were me, okay, if this was me and someone asked me that, first of all, I would only undertake this if I really wanted the job. Like, this is not something you do casually. Secondly, if the answer was yes, I would ask them what they're using it for, and then I would call the government employment standards people and just place a free call. You don't even have to give your name or anything if you don't want to, and just say, like, a company's asking me to do this as part of the evaluation. Is that okay? Is that normal? Is that typical? Do you see any red flags in that? And see what they say, because they're the ones that police the employment law. You're not ratting them out or anything. You're just asking questions from the experts there. And since we're here, I will show you kind of what I mean by that. So if you go to Google, you type in employment standards. Now, for where I am in Canada, in the province of Manitoba, it takes you right to this. So basically, you have two things here. You have the law itself, okay? And then you have the people that enforce it. So these are like the police for laws to do with employment, okay? So if companies violate the law that says, like you can't employ someone and not pay them. You can't employ them and make them work 48 hours without a break. You can't employ them and, do certain things. There's laws about that. So these people are the ones that enforce it. So here's a telephone number and here's a toll-free number. You can call these people. You could ask them questions. If you were in this region, you could do this. Now, most places in the world, you will have an equivalent of this. It won't be called Manitoba employment standards, obviously. It'll be called employment standards or labor laws or some variant of it, okay? So I would place a call to these people. Now, you can read the actual law, okay? But that's what I would do. I'd place a call to these people and just get their take on it. You don't even necessarily have to give the name of the company. You just say, or your own name. You just say, I have a question. Okay, and that can be pretty useful. How do you say this? Majid Nasir? Hi, I'm moving from Iran to Germany. My background and experience is around IT management in large scales like service providing around the country. But now I should change my CV as an IT expert to find. And that's it. Was there a second part of that? Majid? Anyway, if there's a question there, let me know. My studio says, hello, Bill, from Delaware. Awesome, Delaware. Hello, we're in Delaware. How is best to apply for job and prepare for interview nowadays? And what do you think about future of remote jobs? Well, that's a pretty general question. The best way to apply for job and prepare for interview nowadays? Okay, well, I can't give you a full and complete answer to that. The question is just too big. But as far as the best way to apply for a job, I would say is networking. Okay, learn about networking. Don't apply to posted jobs that are posted publicly. Unless you're like you're a first-time job seeker, okay? Like if you're 18 years old, 20 years old, whatever. Okay, fair enough. But if you're 40 years old, forget it. Those jobs are generally not good, and they are very hard to get because they like all the jobs that are posted, all those jobs that you see, all of them, that's about 20% of the jobs that are actually out there, okay? The other 80% are not posted, okay? So those 20% of jobs that are posted, they've got 60% of the candidates competing for them. Okay. So the competition is very high. And on top of that, they tend to not be great jobs. That's why they're posted in the first place. If, as an employer, if you have a job that's desirable, people really want that job. It pays well. It's, good conditions, exciting work, great people, stable, those tend not to be posted because you don't need to spend money publicizing them. You already have lots of people, lots of capable people lined up that you want them. And also, you're at the point where you don't need to hire a stranger to fill the job. You can hire someone that you've worked with or you have some connection to, 3 degrees of separation, whatever. So I would check into networking. If you don't know about networking, look into it, take your first steps into that world. It will benefit you many different ways in your career. And this is the first obvious way, okay? Where was the question here? And how to prepare for an interview? Okay, the short answer is, first of all, go online, learn answers to the common job interview questions, okay? Then do practice, okay? Practice with a friend or a family member. Get them to like pretend to be an interviewer and do a pretend job interview with you. And, you can either give them a list of questions, or you can get them to go and, write their own questions or go out and find questions of their own. They pick the questions and they ask them to you. And then this will be a great test. And you do this over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. And the more you do, the better you will get. You will be so well rehearsed that you will nail it when you get to a real job interview. And you won't be nearly as nervous because you've been through this, a couple hundred times. So that's the way to really nail job interviews. Okay. Practice makes perfect. What do I think about the future of remote jobs? Oh, they're here to stay. Now, there's obviously going to be pushback from organizations. There are two types of organizations, okay? In theory, they're called Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X, they believe workers are lazy. They have to be policed. Workers will do as little work as they can possibly get away with without getting fired, okay? And the way you handle workers is you keep them under a tight leash and you whip them hard. Okay, that's a lot of companies, especially traditional companies. Theory Y companies, they believe the opposite. They believe that people want to work. People enjoy working. You get out of their way. They've chosen to do this profession with their life. So that's what they want to do. That's what they enjoy doing. So let them do that thing and you assist them and you get out of their way and they will do some amazing work for you. Okay. Now, what's the reality? Well, it's a kind of somewhere in the middle, right? But the Theory X companies, like the traditional companies, they hate this. They hate the idea of remote jobs. They want people in offices simply so they can police them. They can watch them. They can make sure they're working and they can penalize them if they're not working. That's what they want. It's silly because it's actually much more efficient if you let people work from home. It's more efficient for the workers. It's more efficient for the organization on paper. But the problem is that goes completely against their culture, their way of thinking. They don't want people taking liberties. They don't want people deciding how they work and when they work. They want to control them. So that's the issue. But remote jobs, simply because they are more efficient, and people like them more, simply because of that, they are here to stay. Okay? Maybe not in every situation, but in general, they're here to stay. Murica says, should a posted salary band on a job posting be a red flag? You mean like a range? Like they say this job pays between this much and this much? The salary seems rather high. It's a manufacturing position in the bio industry. So just giving the range is that's what I'm understanding from your question. If that's what you're asking, no, that's not a red flag at all. In some places, it's actually law. There's a tiny minority of places where they've passed laws, like we were talking about employment standards. They've changed it to say that employers must post a salary range on a job posting. The vast majority of places in the world, that's not a law. Okay, you get a lot of jobs, most jobs, they don't post the compensation. Okay. Now, internally, what's going on is that the employer has a range in mind. Okay, like they have constraints. They can't pay you less than this, and they can't pay you more than that. The upper limit is what they can afford. It also creates problems because if you're being paid more than your boss, that creates some issues. And if you're being paid less than your subordinates, that's creating issues. So there are some hard constraints that they're up against. So there is a range. Whether or not they can afford it, whether that's even a question, there still is a range. So the question is whether they disclose that to you or not. Okay? And it's not a red flag if they post that. Now, they can post anything they want. It doesn't necessarily have to be true. Usually it isn't. They will not post their honest, true salary range because that's allowing them to be hacked. Now, if somebody offers you a job for $100,000, would you be happy? A lot of people would be, especially if you're at the worker level. But then if you find out later that their range was anywhere between 80 and 180, then you might be a little bit disappointed to learn that you only got 100. That was towards the bottom of their range, right? So they're going to keep their range secret as much as they possibly can. So even if it's posted, I wouldn't necessarily go on that. It could be true, but it may not be also. So it's not a red flag. Dimitri says, thanks for the answer. The company is big, the reviews are good, and they said they will not use it, but how do I know? You don't. You don't know. Okay? It's just like sales. Okay? You are in the process of sales. You don't realize it, but you've actually stepped into the world of sales. You are selling yourself. Okay? Sales is a numbers game. You always risk putting effort and time into a lead that's not going to work out in the end. Okay? That's how sales works. Okay? You're always at risk with that, and you're always expending effort and time and sometimes money pursuing leads that don't work out. But the reason why this makes sense is because if you pursue 100 leads, okay, 70 of them will not work out, 30 of them will, okay? So you're willing to engage in expending effort that doesn't directly pay off because indirectly all your efforts will pay off. Okay, if you pursue every lead and you try your best on each one, you do the research, you do the preparation, you invest in being prepared, looking good, being properly groomed and properly prepared, and making a good impression. You've done all that work. Sooner or later, you will nail it and you will land something good. Okay? But you always put that in immediate transaction at risk. Anything you put into any lead, there's always a chance that it may not pay off. And you accept that. Okay? It's a numbers game. You can't be thinking like, oh, when you're in operations, you think like, okay, I expend my effort and my energy and my time because it produces a result. And if I'm going to expend my effort and time and energy and money, it better produce a result or it's a failure. Okay? That's how it works in operations. In sales, you can't have that attitude. Okay? You have to be willing to pursue leads, to do what it takes to pursue the lead, knowing that most leads will not work out, because if you operate like that, soon a lead will, okay? It will work out indirectly. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, you don't know. You don't know what they're going to use it for. But if this is what they require of you to stand a chance to get this job, and you want the job, you have to be open to doing it. You can't always think like, all effort that I expend must have a direct payoff or I don't do it. You can't think like that in sales. Okay? I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying that you've got to think in the context of sales to do it. Okay? If you have a bunch of other more promising leads that don't require a week of your time or work or whatever, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to pursue this because they're asking so much. But in the absence of all of those, and if this is something you really, really want, and it would be really awesome if you got it, then, maybe do it. And you risk it not working out, but you just chalk it up to I'm pursuing leads, and sooner or later this strategy works. We'll have a direct result. And you could always report them to the employment standards if they take your work and run with it after doing something. I'm just saying. I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm just saying that you can always do that. So there is a way of getting your own back if they abuse you and they do something illegal, essentially. Okay, Jack N says, thanks for answering my previous question. To what extent should you job hop every few years as a young professional with in-demand skills? What are some ways that this could harm you down the road? Great question, Jack. Listen, the answer to this question is highly variable on the situation, but generally, job hopping is good. Okay? Being able to look at the job market at any moment and take advantage of it, like fill a need, is a great thing. It all things being equal, you will be more successful than the person who doesn't do that. Okay. Traditionally, people would stay in one place. They wouldn't move around nearly as much as they do now. Okay. Employees would be much more loyal to their employer. And in return, the employer would have a much more of a parental kind of relationship with their employees. They would take care of them. Well, several things have changed. That describes like the 1970s and earlier. Several things have changed in the last couple of generations. Employers do not act like parental, sort of paternal, people in their relationships towards their employees. They lay them off if their quarterly results are down. Okay, so it's human resources. They treat people like resources, like any other resource, like raw materials, like energy, like real estate. It's inventory. That's the idea behind it. Okay. Conversely, the employees have decided collectively, there's this big trend that they have no loyalty to their employer. And if you're going to treat workers like this, then workers are going to look out for number one, and I'm going to stay here as long as it makes obvious sense for me to do it. The moment it no longer makes sense, I'm out of here. Right. We've seen that also in the way compensation has changed. In the past, people cared more about benefits and things like this, more long-term kind of compensation. Whereas now people just want a sort of cash kind of payment. You pay me for my time. That's it. I don't need you for anything else. I don't care about stock. I don't care about options. I don't care about long-term benefits. I just want cash. So it's a much more short-term, immediate relationship. So whenever you're casually looking, and if an opportunity opens up in your industry or your hometown or whatever, and you jump into that, you come out on top. Speaking from experience, having done that, you do run the risk of, like, if you do it in a certain way, if you keep hopping like every year or something like that, you run the risk of people seeing you as a high-risk candidate because you never stick around for anything much. But you can undo that by having one job on your resume that you were there for like 5-6 years. Okay, so that bucks the trend. And especially if you're in an industry like I was, where people got promoted mainly by seniority. The problem with that, it means that you might need to be there for 20 years to get a promotion up to the next level above you. It's like, who wants to wait around for that? Maybe in the 1970s and earlier, people were prepared to put up with that, but not in today's age. I certainly wasn't. So I job hopped to climb the ladder, because an opportunity would open up in that higher level, like at a competing company. So you take it, So it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I think that across the board, my opinion is that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, so always be looking. It also gives you more security, being able to see what's going on, see if there's other opportunities out there. It gives you alternatives. I mean, if you are, as you said, you have in-demand skills, then it shouldn't be much of a dilemma. If they're wanting to hire someone like you right now, even if they're wanting to pay you more money, then it should be a no-brainer. Okay. The question I think you're struggling with is, are you rewarded for loyalty? Yes, you are sometimes, but it's like that expression, there's many a slip twixt a cup and a lip. A lot of things can happen, and I've seen a lot of people that have, been loyal because they're predicting the future. They're saying, if I stay here for 5 years, 10 years, I will eventually become the manager. Maybe I'm the protege of the manager, so I'm next in line to run the place when they leave, when they retire or something. A lot of things can happen before that occurs. Unbeknownst to them, 5 years later, after putting in their time, the whole place is sold. It's acquired by another company. They restructure the entire thing. They bring in their own manager, and sorry, you get nothing. You're in your job permanently. You're not moving up. So a lot of things can happen. And a lot of people of my generation and the current generation now, people have been saying, look, I want something in hand now. I don't want promises of what could happen in the future. I want something now in my hand. So I'm not prepared to play this role where I just stay and I do my time with the promise that I'll eventually move up or I'll get some reward later. And that's based on events that have occurred, right? That's based on people seeing how well that's worked out for a lot of other people. Hey, Limaz, it's good to have you back. My studio says 3 years experienced looking for second job, remote job in SDE. What's SDE? Don't use acronyms with me. I got to deal with people from all over the world in every industry you could ever imagine. So I don't know acronyms. Okay. Don't use shop talk or acronyms. Spell it out. Murica says, yes, a range. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense then, what I was saying. Okay, well, it seems like we've come to the end of our questions for today, at least for the moment. So unless we get any in the next 30 seconds or so, I'm probably going to be signing off soon. But I will have a video coming out tomorrow. And I'll probably be back. I may not be back next Monday. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here next Monday to do one of these next week. But certainly after that, I will be back for the Q&A chats. So, yeah. Okay, I don't see a lot of questions coming in. Anyway, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. There's 22 of you guys here. If you are confused, you are overwhelmed by the job search process, you're out of your comfort zone, you don't know what to do, it's overwhelming. One option that I created was my course here, my Get Hired course. It's basically all my recommendations all in one place, in order, in a step-by-step process with templates and examples. So check that out if you are into that kind of thing. That sounds like a solution for you. Dipin sent a question. I'm going to answer Dipin's question and then we'll be signing off. So Dipin says, job descriptions have super high requirements. Is it okay to fib a little bit on your resume, like knowing certain technical stuff to meet those requirements? No, it isn't. No, you don't lie. Okay, now remember, this is sales, okay? You can exaggerate. You can put a positive spin on things. And what I think is acceptable, personally, is, people say they have certain capabilities, right? Okay. Let's say you studied something 5 years ago in school, okay? And somebody asks you, do you know that? Well, the answer is yes. Now, the reality is okay, well, I don't remember precisely from 5 years ago all the details. But if I needed that knowledge, I have all my old books. And within 1 day of preparation, I could do a refresher on it. And then I would have the capabilities. I'd know it all again. I'd load it all back up into my head, and then I can do it. Okay? So if someone asks you, do you know this? Or do you have the capability of using this knowledge? The answer is yes. For all practical purposes, yes. I did learn it. I did know it at one point. It was 5 years ago, but I can easily get back up to speed in a day, or maybe 2 days. So, whatever we're talking about here, so that's acceptable. But saying you've done something when you haven't, that's bad. Saying you know something when you don't, that's bad. misrepresenting yourself is bad. There is a thing called integrity. And I mean, not to lecture anyone on integrity or anything, but I mean, it is important. You don't want to start off by lying and misrepresenting things that are serious. Generally that does not work out well in the end. Okay. It's not about lying. It's about selling. You basically put a positive spin on everything. You don't mention your weaknesses. You accentuate and overemphasize your strengths. Okay. That's what it's about. It's not about lying. Okay. So learning that process, is important. You're in the process of sales. You are selling yourself. Okay. What do salespeople do? Salespeople basically say look at all the advantages. Look at all the upside. Look what it could do for you. They don't say, well, it does this, but then it also has this problem. And, people say that it's great, but then other people say that it's terrible. That's not how you sell something, right? It's not about lying. It's about putting a positive spin. Okay, one more question. Lima says, what would happen if I didn't put all my jobs on my CV? Would that bring some consequences, or is it okay if I don't bring every single? Yeah, it's perfectly fine. You don't have to put everything on there. Remember, your resume isn't like some kind of government record. It's a promotional tool, right? Put the things on there that you think will best sell you and raise the least red flags. A famous example of that is if you're going for a conventional job, especially if you're going through a recruiter of some kind, don't put your entrepreneurial ventures on your resume. Because although you and I know that those are extremely valuable and you should be very proud of those, a recruiter will see it as a huge red flag. They'll think, oh, if we hire you, you're going to be doing your own stuff on the side, and your loyalty is going to be split between us and this job and your own stuff, and your own stuff will always win out because it's your baby. It's your creative thing, So sorry, you're a high-risk candidate, so no dice, right? So yeah, you put what's on there that is best going to sell you. And Moises says, hi, Bill, this is Moises from MX. How do you make your CV pass the, here we go, applicant tracking software process from the recruiters? And do you consider having someone else to me paid to fix my CV to ensure to pass the filters? I don't know, and I don't care, to be honest with you. I don't care about applicant tracking software. It's a waste of time for you and for them. Usually, applicant tracking software is something that you have to deal with when you're going for crappy jobs. Nobody puts applicant tracking software on good jobs they have to apply to, right? So, and it's a continually evolving game of cat and mouse. What worked a year ago to hack applicant tracking software, give them what they want, doesn't work now. It's continually evolving, and it's stupid. It's jobs where they get so many applicants that they don't have the time to read your resume. Is that really what you want to spend your time on? Where you're going in there with 250 applicants? Also, they put it for jobs where they're not interested enough to read your resume. Is that what you want to put in for? Is that a great place to work? Is that a great evaluation of you? So there's so many other things out there that you could put in for. I would spend your time focusing on those. This is spending all your effort on something that's probably not great to begin with. So sorry if that's kind of pessimistic, but that's my honest opinion about those kind of things. So anyway, I have to sign off. It's been over an hour. So thank you very much. You guys are awesome. And I will see you soon, and I wish you all the best. Take care.